CC Media Incorporated presents Life Raft Operation and Survival Practices. The plain truth of the matter is that working in an offshore and maritime environment presents a certain amount of risk. The better equipped and trained you are to face these risks head-on, the better your chances of survival in an emergency situation. Today, there have been great advances made in the field of survival equipment, including highly sophisticated and reliable life raft systems. However, in an emergency, when there is no time to lose, knowing how to launch, board, and maintain a life raft as if it were second nature can mean the difference between life and death. In a rapidly developing emergency, the first order of business is to establish contact by radio with a shore base or another vessel in the vicinity and alert them to the situation. The person on watch should know the vessel's or installation's current position and attempt to communicate it along with the nature of the emergency and any other pertinent information. The alarm should be sounded to alert the crew in order that they have time to gather survival gear and muster at emergency stations outlined on the station bill. It's better to have to restow equipment later if the situation proves not to be serious than to have no time at all when the installation begins to go under or explodes. One of the most important steps you can take to save your life is to put on several layers of warm clothing, even if you have a survival suit. If you have to enter the water without a survival suit, the initial shock can prove disabling, if not fatal. Several layers of clothing will minimize that shock and prolong your survival time by reducing loss of body heat. Once in the life raft, warm clothing may save your life by reducing the effects of the cold. Far more individuals die each year from hypothermia than from a lack of food or water. Along with warm clothing goes personal flotation devices, such as a Type 1 life jacket. A Type 1 life jacket is designed to keep you afloat in the water without effort, which is a must for even short-term survival. If you don't have time to put on your life jacket before entering the water, bring it along with you and then put it on. The order to abandon a vessel or installation should only be given by the captain or person in charge, and only when the installation is in such danger that the lives of the people on board are endangered. All attempts of saving the vessel have been tried, and the life raft has now become the best source of shelter. You should always wait for the order to abandon. However, if you think it's probable that command is missing or dead, and your situation is immediately life-threatening, move forward. Time is of the essence. It is important to remember that while it can be fatal to wait too long until you abandon, it can be just as dangerous to place yourself in a survival craft before it becomes necessary. As long as the mother vessel remains afloat and there is a relatively safe area for personnel on board with access to an escape route and life raft, it continues to offer you the best source of shelter and chance of being found. If you are forced to find shelter in a life raft, which is your second best abandonment choice after a totally enclosed lifeboat, you'll need to be familiar with the various launching methods and types of rafts found on structures and vessels working throughout the world. There are several methods of launching life rafts. However, once inflated, the basic construction is similar, with only a few small differences between types. Generally, the majority of life rafts are constructed of two superimposed buoyancy tubes, each capable on its own to support the full complement of the raft in case one of them were to fail. The raft uses a metal cylinder filled with CO2, carbon dioxide, to inflate the buoyancy tubes. An arch that supports a canopy also automatically inflates, providing shelter from the outside marine environment. Some escape systems utilize a large open raft that is not equipped with a canopy. Aviation life rafts installed on marine service aircraft may also not utilize a canopy. These life rafts can either be manually or automatically launched in case of a water ditching, and are stored in either a plastic PVC or soft-type valise. Davit-launched life rafts are similar to conventional throw-over types. However, they have the capability to be boarded dry from the deck level and lowered to the water with their full complement of personnel at a controlled rate. This type of life raft is often used as a secondary means of escape from offshore installations and ships in the event the lifeboats become inaccessible or incapacitated. The davit life raft canister or canisters are stored next to a single davit arm, which is used to lower the raft. Let's take a brief look at the davit launch procedure to be followed. Move the raft into a location adjacent to an opening in the rail. Pull out approximately 3 meters of painter line and secure to a strong point. Also secure all bowsing and canister retaining lines. Release the life raft suspension shackle and attach the davit's automatic release hook to the shackle. Hook up on the davit fall, allowing the life raft to swing outboard. Continue hoisting until the hook is nearly at the davit head. If the raft does not automatically inflate, pull out the painter to its maximum extent and give a sharp tug to inflate. When the raft is fully inflated, lower it until the entrance is level with the deck and adjust the bowsing lines to steady the raft alongside. Board the raft, being sure to first remove any sharp objects and to evenly disperse passengers on all sides. Ensure that the release hook's trip lanyard is hanging over the inboard entrance and that a crew member in charge has it in hand. Release all restraining lines and throw them into the raft. After checking that all is clear below, activate the brake release mechanism and begin the descent to the water. As the raft approaches the sea at around 2 meters or 6 feet, the automatic release davit hook should be pulled or cocked to trip the hook, and the raft will automatically release upon becoming waterborne. If it does not release, activate the manual cable release mechanism. Even though davit launch procedures are similar from one location to another, be sure to learn and practice the exact procedure necessary for your installation. In case of flammable liquids or debris in the water, a davit-launched life raft can be manually thrown overboard. Personnel should then evacuate by ladders and swim with the raft to an area where it can be safely inflated. As you have seen with the davit launch system, the majority of life rafts are stored in rigid, watertight fiberglass containers, specifically designed for deck stowage areas. On a vessel or installation, life rafts should be stowed on top of the wheelhouse or some other easily accessed deck area. This enables the rafts to float free in case the vessel or structure capsizes or sinks. The life raft canister should be secured to its cradle with a hydrostatic release and the painter tied to the vessel's structure with a weak link. The hydrostatic release provides for the automatic release of a life raft in its container upon immersion in 5 to 15 feet of water, allowing the raft to float free and surface. This is how the process works. After a vessel has sunk to a depth between 5 and 15 feet, the hydrostatic release unit will automatically disconnect the raft container retaining strap from the deck cradle unit, allowing the buoyant container to surface. As the ship continues to sink, the raft's painter, which is attached to a strong point on the ship, becomes fully withdrawn and actuates the raft's CO2 inflation system as long as the water depth exceeds 80 feet or 25 meters. In shallower water, a person on the water surface would have to continue pulling the painter out to inflate the raft. If the vessel continues to sink, the painter, also known as the operating line, is designed with a weak link to break before the raft is drawn under. Hopefully, you will have time to manually launch your vessel's life rafts before it's too late. To begin a manual launch procedure, ensure the life raft painter line is secured to a strong point. Release the raft's lashings from the cradle and check that the water below the raft is clear. Pick the life raft up in its container using proper lifting techniques and watch for slipping hazards, especially if the vessel is listing severely. Carefully proceed to throw the raft over the lee side. Once in the water, the painter should be pulled until resistance is felt. A sharp tug then activates the gas bottle, resulting in the inflation of the raft. Due to the difficulty and time involved in having to pick up and throw the life raft overboard, some vessels now mount the life raft canisters on stowage ramps, which also incorporate a hydrostatic release system. These systems make the launching of a life raft considerably easier and quicker. Immediately after inflating the life raft, it is normal for you to hear gas escaping through the pressure relief valves installed on the raft. This allows excess gas to automatically escape and will probably stop in a few minutes. The main rule in marine survival situations is to stay dry. To ensure this, the life raft may be boarded in 3 ways. First, by climbing down a ladder, stairs, net, or line. Second, it may be possible to jump directly into the raft, but only below a height of 3 meters or 10 feet. Before jumping, first remove any heavy footwear. Be sure to avoid other survivors in the raft as you jump into the entrance, landing on your toes, knees bent, with arms outstretched to absorb the impact on the canopy. Do not jump onto the canopy, as personnel inside could be injured. The third method is to board from the water. Get down below a height of 10 meters or 30 feet and utilize the proper water entry step-off procedure. In the unlikely event that a life raft is inflated upside down, it can only be righted by a man in the water. Swim on your back, using only the arms, to the side of the raft closest to the gas bottle. Next, facing the raft, turn it into the wind and kick and pull yourself up onto the raft. Once on the raft, place your feet on the gas bottle, grab the righting strap, and lean back over the edge until the raft begins to right itself. Once the raft has reached the vertical and starts to come over, jump back well clear of the descending raft. If the raft lands on top of you, do not panic. The bottom of the raft is soft and your head will form an air pocket. Take a breath and then use your arms to pull yourself from under the raft, remaining face up. If you turn with your face down, it's possible that your life jacket will hang up on the bottom of the life raft, making it difficult for you to get out from underneath. Survivors in the water upon arriving at the raft should help each other to board. Those remaining in the water should wait their turn while holding onto the lifelines around the outside of the raft. Boarding the raft from the sea takes considerable effort. Most new models of life rafts have inflatable ramps on at least one entrance that makes it easier, as shown here, to board the raft. With a boarding ladder, you begin by placing your foot on the highest rung possible while bobbing up and down, using the buoyancy of your PFD or survival suit to lift you out of the water as you attempt to reach inside and grab the internal lifelines. Once up on the tube, pull yourself in, watching that you do not pull on the canopy, which can be torn easily. Help all personnel into the raft and space everyone evenly around the perimeter. Keep as much weight as possible to the outside perimeter to prevent wind from blowing up under the raft in rough seas. Once inside the raft, you will find steadying lines for the raft's occupants to put their arms through or grab. This helps prevent injury to survivors during rough seas. Look for other survivors in the water using a flashlight at night, which can be found in the survival pack. Look for reflective tape and listen for whistles. The flashlight also doubles as a signaling device. If a crewmate is in the water, injured and unable to reach the raft, it may be necessary to assist him. A 100-foot heaving line with a small floating ring known as a quoit can be thrown to the person in the water who can grab on and be pulled in. If necessary, a crew member can swim to recover someone in need. Because the raft may drift faster than a man can swim, the quoit and line should be taken when retrieving a person. Place your arm inside the quoit, above the level of the elbow, keeping the arm bent. This will allow the rescuer and subject to be easily pulled back to the raft. Carefully maneuver the victim to face the raft. Two persons on board the raft can grab the subject by his life jacket or survival suit and one arm. Push the person slightly down into the water and use his buoyancy to help carefully spring him up onto the inflation tube. Once the hips have cleared the tube, gently turn the victim onto his back and pull him into the raft. Keep the subject lying on his back until you can determine the extent of his injuries. When possible, all personnel with injuries should be assessed and treated. If a crewman is recovered from the water with all the signs of drowning, mouth-to-mouth rescue breathing and CPR should be started immediately and continued until help arrives or it threatens the well-being of the crew. It is very difficult to perform CPR in the life raft due to the soft floor. One method to perform chest compressions is to place the victim on top of another person, who then wraps his arms around the victim's chest, locks his hands, and performs the chest compressions as if he were giving a bear hug. Once all seriously injured crew members have been treated, the rest of the crew must look after their own health by passing out seasickness pills. Even the most hardened sea dog is apt to get sick in a raft. Seasickness should be taken seriously, as it results in the loss of precious body fluids and slows a person's ability to act quickly, if at all. If your vessel is still afloat, stay tied to it unless fire or some other form of danger forces you to cut the painter. The vessel may not sink and could be used for potential shelter, and if it does sink in shallow water, it will serve as an anchor. By remaining with the vessel, you're staying close to the position of your distress call, and you'll be easier to spot by rescuers. If you need to cut the painter line, keep as much line as possible and use the curved knife stored on the tube for this purpose. When finished, replace the knife. If there is more than one raft on the scene, tie them together using the life raft's painters. There is safety in numbers, and with 2 or more life rafts, you have increased survival gear and present a larger profile. If the seas are rough, make sure there is adequate line, about 50 feet, between the rafts, so wind cannot get underneath and cause them to snatch and possibly capsize. Whenever towing a life raft, the best point to tow it from is the painter line, which is often connected to the raft with a bridle. Never exceed a towing speed of 2 miles per hour. If the raft has been cut clear of the parent vessel, check that the raft's sea anchor has been properly streamed. The sea anchor, which is deployed automatically upon inflation, serves to position the entrances at right angles to the weather, helps stabilize the raft in the water, and reduces the rate of drift, helping you to stay closer to your last reported position. The sea anchor should be inspected frequently, and is so important a spare one can be found packed aboard. By changing the drogue's point of attachment, you can position the openings of the raft to gain increased ventilation during hot weather, or increased protection during heavy seas. If both anchors have been lost, it is important to improvise with other devices to take their place. Discarded clothing, paddles tied to a life jacket, and buckets can be used as substitute drogues. If you have to increase your drift rate to clear an obstacle or make landfall, haul the sea anchor up to the life raft and remove it from the water. The period immediately following an evacuation to the life raft is crucial. Personnel are going to be cold, exhausted, wet, and suffering from varying degrees of shock. Physical and mental letdowns are probable at a time when you will be faced with multiple problems. You must use your resolve to maintain and encourage the will to live in yourself and others in order to get through this ordeal. The first person aboard the life raft is to take immediate charge of all safety procedures. Later, an election is held to pick the most experienced, able-bodied raft commander. The raft commander is now responsible for his own survival as well as his crew. A positive attitude, coupled with a sense of calm and a touch of humor, will increase morale and increase everyone's will to survive. Immediately assign watch and other duties, no matter how trivial, to all except the severely injured. Routine activities will ease boredom and help morale. The watchkeepers should look for other survival craft, persons in the water, passing ships, aircraft, and changes in the weather. Close down the raft entrances once everyone is inside to keep the cold out and keep in the warmth generated by the occupants. A system of straps, Velcro, or tabs is provided with instructions found printed on the canopy or in the survival bag. Leave a small hole for ventilation, which the posted lookout person can utilize. With cold being the biggest killer, every attempt should be made to raise the body temperature of the raft's inhabitants by pumping or bailing out any water and drying the interior with sponges or clothing. If clothing is wet, remove it, wring it out, and put it back on. It has been shown that the temperature inside a life raft can be raised to 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 Celsius in just 1 hour, even with sub-zero outside temperatures. Getting dry not only helps to raise your temperature, but also guards against immersion or trench foot. CO2 gas is odorless, tasteless, and colorless, so it's important to watch for leaks bubbling in the water. If you suspect a leak, leave the entrances of the raft open, as breathing a large amount of CO2 can suffocate you. If leaks develop in the buoyancy tubes, a repair kit is usually provided among the raft supplies. This kit will include rubber tube patches, which utilize rubber cement, and sealing clamps for plugging larger holes. Instructions on their use will be included. During the day, the rise in temperatures may be enough to cause the gas to expand and activate the relief valves. At night, when the temperature falls, You might have to pump up the tubes with the supplied air pump to keep them rigid as the gas contracts. The pump is also required to inflate the double-skin floor in order to provide insulation from the cold seas and to improve stability. The hand pump fits into valves located conveniently inside the life raft. These will include valves for upper and lower buoyancy tubes, the canopy arch, and the floor. Lights are fitted to the top of the life raft's canopy and inside the raft. They are powered by water-activated cells located just below the waterline. The exterior light is visible on a dark night with clear visibility at a distance of up to 2 miles and should operate 12 hours. The interior light should also operate 12 hours, long enough and with sufficient intensity to enable the occupants to read any survival and equipment instructions. When they are not needed, disconnect them to conserve energy. Once everyone is settled in, inventory must be taken to examine what equipment and supplies are carried aboard the life raft, including all personnel effects, which should be placed under the control of the raft commander. It's time to take stock of the situation and organize your activities. Begin by opening up the equipment bag, if you haven't already, which will be found secured inside the raft. First, we find a set of paddles which are used to maneuver the raft, but with some ingenuity can be turned into a fishing rod or even splints for broken limbs. Next, we find the hand air pump. The excitement continues with leak stoppers, a series of rubber and wooden threaded conical stoppers used to plug leaks until permanent repairs are made. The repair kit, which contains various size fabric patches, scissors, sanding cloth, and adhesives. The infamous baler, used for bailing water but can also double as a measuring cup or for collecting rainwater. Sponges, used for drying off the inside of the raft, the floor, survivors, and cleaning up after dinner. A spare sea anchor, which can also serve as a bandage, tourniquet, sling, or lifeline. And finally, a waterproof flashlight used as a signaling device and which can also attract fish at night. Spare bulbs and batteries are found in the emergency pack. The majority of the life raft's equipment is stowed in an emergency pack, comprised of a cylinder wrapped in plastic and secured to the inside of the raft. The following equipment is available on most life rafts as cited by the 1986 SOLAS requirements. These supplies and features may differ when deployed at offshore installations and aboard certain aircraft. They include can openers, repair kit, first aid kit, whistle, rocket parachute flares, handheld red flares, buoyant smoke signals, waterproof flashlight with spare batteries and bulb, a radar reflector, daylight signaling mirror, instruction on life-saving signals, fishing tackle, food rations, containers of fresh water, optional water desalting system, graduated drinking cup, anti-seasickness medicine and seasickness bags, survival and immediate action instruction handbook, and thermal protective aids. Remember to look for this equipment, read the instructions, practice using all of it effectively, and keep it ready for quick action. It just might save your life. Begin collecting rainwater immediately to add to your provisions. Many life raft models have a rain catchment built into the raft's canopy. Use whatever containers you can store it in. Under conditions of high wind and spray, it may be impossible to collect potable water. It is vital to maintain your physical condition, reducing your exposure to the cold and sun. Exposure to the sun increases thirst and water requirements, in addition to the harm received from sunburn on the skin. Cover any exposed skin with clothing and shield your eyes from glare by cutting a slit in a piece of cardboard. In hot climates, keep entrances open, converting the entrance covers to awnings using the raft's paddles. Deflate the raft's floor and drench the outside of the canopy with seawater to lower the internal temperature. In cold weather, place as much clothing on as you can in order to insulate yourself. Alternate seating in order to transfer body heat between passengers. Feet should be positioned under the armpits of the person sitting across from you. Having survived an initial emergency situation, The final stage, rescue, can be the most hazardous of all if the person being rescued is unaware of the techniques and proper procedures required for a safe evacuation by either helicopter or boat. Many survival tasks can be practiced and trained for, but about the only time you will have a chance to be recovered by a helicopter is when your life hangs in the balance of the success of this operation. You should be confident that you have survived this long to manage a rescue attempt and remain calm, controlling frustration and not panicking. Helicopters generally cannot operate at night or in high wind conditions. But even if an attempted retrieval has failed, you should be assured that your location is now known and that these dedicated men and women will not rest until you're home safely. When a rescue helicopter approaches, all survivors should don life jackets and place themselves on top of the canopy and depress the arch by sitting on it. The flattening of the canopy is necessary to prevent the gale-like wind force of the hovering helicopter from upsetting the stability of the life raft. Rescue by a helicopter may take several forms depending upon the prevailing weather conditions and condition of the survivors. Rescue personnel are highly trained, and it is vital that you follow their directions explicitly. In most cases, a rescue basket will be lowered to you, often accompanied by a rescue diver, who will either jump in from the helicopter or ride down with the basket. It may be necessary for you to get into the water to initiate retrieval, as life rafts are very susceptible to capsizing from the high winds created by the rotors. Follow the commands of the rescue diver to the letter. Anything lowered from a helicopter will have built up a strong static electrical charge, which must be grounded into the water before contact with survivors is made. While in the water, the basket will be trawled toward you. If the open side or mouth is pointed away from you, turn it so that you can get in. As soon as you are stabilized in the basket, raise an arm and give the thumbs up sign. Sit still and grab hold with both hands. You will be hoisted up as soon as conditions permit. Do not attempt to enter the helicopter until told to do so. Rescue by vessel is also very hazardous, as rescue craft move at different speeds in rough seas, and there is always the chance of the raft and personnel being run over. It is essential that the instructions of the rescue craft's captain and crew be followed exactly. All personnel should don their life jackets and be ready to move to the entrance of the life raft. A lifeline from the rescue vessel to survivors is very helpful. This may be the most strenuous part of your ordeal, so remain calm, alert, and orderly. With access to modern life-saving equipment, hands-on training, and a positive mental outlook, the chances of you surviving a marine emergency evacuation are excellent. Remember, when the chips are down, the best resource available is your own innate ability and a history of hands-on training. Moxie Media Incorporated presents Lifeboat Operation and Survival Practices, an in-depth introduction and orientation to your primary means of escape in a platform, rig, or shipboard emergency. In the majority of emergency situations, the lifeboat is the most frequently used means of escape from an offshore oil installation or ship. It may be referred to as a life capsule, a survival craft, as well as a totally enclosed motor-propelled survival craft, or TEMPS for short. For the rest of this program, we will usually refer to it simply as a lifeboat. There are several manufacturers and types of lifeboats used all over the world. However, once in the water, they operate under the same basic procedures. The biggest differences lie in the boat's launching systems, which are made up of three main types: the single wire, double wire, and the big splash of a free-fall system. The properties of enclosed lifeboats that make them so advantageous to abandoning personnel in a fire, blowout, toxic gas, or collision-type emergency are set under international convention and national laws. These features include a rigid watertight hull that is fitted or injected with polyurethane foam, making it virtually unsinkable even when fully loaded, flooded, and open to the sea. A coat of international orange paint on the hull and enclosure to provide high visibility for easier detection. With all doors and hatches closed and personnel evenly seated with their seatbelts on, the survival craft should be self-righting. Tougher new SOLAS, Safety of Life at Sea regulations, call for the craft to allow above-water egress, even if passengers are out of their seats and the boat is flooded. A propulsion system, generally equipped with a marine diesel engine, capable of sustaining 6 knots with a full complement of passengers for up to 24 hours. The hull and enclosure is manufactured with fire-retardant reinforced fiberglass that becomes fire-resistant when the lifeboat's sprinkler system is activated, bathing the exterior of the craft with seawater. And the ability to escape through areas of toxic gases with a self-contained air system capable of sustaining up to 10 minutes of operation. This system allows the engine and escaping personnel to function normally while providing a positive pressure to the craft's interior to prevent toxic gases from entering. Now, for the purposes of this video, we will only briefly identify some of the more popular davit, winch, and releasing mechanisms used in the launching of lifeboats on offshore installations and ships. Although each installation may differ in the number of wires, also called falls, lines, and cables, which are used to lower survival craft, they all utilize davits to hold the lifeboat in place and to use as a means of lowering the craft over the side, a winch to recover the lifeboat, and a releasing mechanism to release the falls from the boat, allowing the lifeboat to escape. It is your responsibility to learn the exact launching procedure for the equipment used at your facility. You won't have time to learn in an emergency situation when one false move could mean your life. As seen earlier, launch systems come in 3 basic types. Shown here, we're looking at a Harting lifeboat, utilizing a free fall method of launching, which allows the full complement of personnel on board to release quickly and fall into the sea. Personnel are seated backwards and tightly strapped in to provide the best possible protection against the impacts of launching from heights of up to 120 feet or 40 meters. This design allows the craft to move safely away from the vessel or platform at a speed of 10 to 12 knots without engine power. The free-fall boat can also be launched by means of a controlled gravity lowering system, as well as in a float-free configuration. A single-line launch system, which is found on Survival System International capsules, or what was once known as Whittaker, provides an efficient launch means during an emergency, as well as ease of recovery of the craft during training. The rounder shape of these capsules provide 360 degrees of clear visibility and the ability to turn 180 degrees in less than the capsule's length at full speed, making it easier to get out of trouble quickly around rig and platform legs. A double-line launch system utilizes 2 wires to lower a lifeboat to the water below. Shown here is a Shat watercraft lifeboat being deployed. The double-line system provides directional control of the craft when waterborne to ensure a rapid getaway, even in hazardous conditions. Davits are required to raise and lower just about any type of lifeboat found aboard offshore installations and ships. They provide the means of holding the life craft far enough away from the structure, even under conditions of adverse list or trim, to enable the craft to be safely lowered to the water. An outrigger-type davit consists of a welded fixed structure which supports the winch and lifeboat over the water, allowing for a direct descent to the water surface. It is primarily found on mobile offshore drilling units or offshore oil platforms. A widely used launch system on ships with totally enclosed lifeboats is the Miranda Gravity Davit, which, when activated, lowers a cradle along inclined trackways into the water. The cradle, with its rollers, provides protection for the boat and will operate in both inboard and outboard list conditions. No matter what type of launching system, a winch is used to lower and raise the lifeboat. Gravity lowers the craft to the water, and a motor is used to raise it back up. There are many types of davit systems used on ships and installations. Know how yours operates. To start any launch sequence, you must release the brake by pulling on a cable, or the brake can be released directly at the winch. Some winches are designed so that the operator can stop the descent while others commit you to the water. A gravity descent operates at 2 to 3 feet per second. The winch, most often driven by an electric motor, is also used to recover the boat back into its davit system. Limit or proximity switches are used to stop the winch motor as the boat approaches the stowed position. A hand crank is used for the final few inches. One of the most critical components of a launch system is the cable release mechanism, which is utilized to release the lowering line or falls once in the water, allowing the lifeboat to quickly motor away from the danger area. Release mechanisms fall under 2 categories. The first is an on-load release, which, when activated, will release the craft at any time, whether it is in the water or still dangling in the air. Extreme care obviously must be taken when launching the boat to not inadvertently activate this mechanism. The second releasing system was designed to avert any potential accidents caused by premature release. The offload releasing mechanism is safer because the hooks will not release until the weight has been taken off the cable as the boat enters the water. A manual on-load override is provided in case of a malfunction. Since the releasing mechanism is the key to a speedy and successful launch, crew members should be instructed and trained on all types of releasing mechanisms found at their installation or ship. The regular testing and servicing of release equipment is a requirement and must be complied with as per manufacturer, company, and local regulations. Ship, rig, or platform personnel should be trained to perform regular maintenance on their systems. When an alarm goes off, you should be able to immediately identify the type of emergency. If abandonment of the installation is signaled, you need to determine without hesitation what your course of action will be. Gather any personal protective equipment, such as a life jacket, an immersion suit, warm clothes, a flashlight, and a radio. Your station bill will point out which lifeboat station you're assigned to muster. This information, along with the route to a secondary station, should also be second nature. On your way there, be aware of any potentially hazardous areas of the installation and stay clear if danger is indicated. An announcement may be passed over loudspeakers to instruct you on which lifeboat stations will be used for abandonment. When possible, the installation's lee lifeboats should be used so that when launched, they will drift away from the rig or platform. If a boat is launched on the windward side, the boat must be turned and driven away as rapidly as possible to avoid drifting into the structure. If possible, wait for instructions from the person in charge on which lifeboats are to be used. His or her decision will take into account other considerations, such as toxic gas, fire and smoke, listing conditions, and how much time is available for abandonment. The totally enclosed lifeboat is your first choice of abandonment options if evacuation by supply vessels or helicopters is not practical. The lifeboat should be utilized before attempting any other means of escape, such as life rafts, life floats, or water entry. Once gathered at the muster station, the lifeboat will begin to be readied as a roll call by name is made. The lifeboat commander, also known as the coxswain, is a crew member who has been thoroughly trained on the launching and operation of the lifeboat. He should make it clear that he is in command and that his orders are to be followed to the letter. This should give everyone confidence in their ability to successfully abandon the installation. Ensure that everybody is present, fully briefed, and properly dressed in immersion suits or warm clothing and life jackets. Any missing personnel should be reported to command. While roll call is being held and before boarding and lowering, the coxswain or other qualified persons should be following these steps. All wires, guardrails, and maintenance pennants cleared for lowering. Inspect the hull and enclosure for damage, and be sure there is clear path for descent to the water. Open and secure the hatches and enter the craft. Make sure that the drain plug is fitted securely. Ensure the air support system is operational by checking valve positions and gauge pressure, being sure not to waste the supply by keeping it off until launch is underway. Prepare the water spray system for operation in case the lifeboat encounters incendiary conditions during the evacuation. Ensure that all doors and hatches are secure except those needed for access. Check on the engine starting systems. Many motor-propelled lifeboats will have two methods of starting the engine, either electric, hydraulic, or manual. The commander and other crew members should be fully trained in their operation. Begin the engine startup procedure by checking that the fuel valves at both the tanks and engine are open. Ready the engine controls by placing the gear shift lever in neutral and throttle at full. Check that the engine stop lever is now in the start position. If necessary, place the cold start or excess fuel device in the on position. Again, if applicable, check that the decompression levers are in the start position and that the hydraulic start accumulator pressure is charged for starting. And finally, start the engine up. In a critical situation, board at once. However, if time permits, personnel may board after the engine has been started. If any delay occurs once loading has been accomplished and before the order to abandon is given, the engine may be stopped to prevent overheating. The engine temperature gauge should be carefully monitored. Once the order to load has been received, the commander should direct the procedure. Ensure that personnel are evenly distributed and seated on all levels of the lifeboat. This will enhance the craft's self-righting capabilities and give the lifeboat commander the greatest possible control of the boat. All personnel upon seating should strap themselves in and remain secured in their seats with life jackets fastened, unless delegated by the commander to operate equipment. Unless there is reason to believe that command on the installation or ship is either dead or unable to communicate, it is important to wait until word has been given to launch the lifeboat. Once the order to abandon has been given, all haste should be made to launch, first taking these crucial steps. Check wind speed, direction, and sea state. Make sure all hatches and access doors have been closed. Know the compass course to clear the installation and to achieve a safe rescue position. It is very likely that the commander's visibility will be hampered by either smoke, fire, darkness, heavy rains and seas, or the water spray system. Check the compass heading while still on the davits. Make sure the helm is in the correct position to clear the installation once the boat is in the water. The commander should brief all personnel to stay calm as he or someone assigned by him commences the launch by activating the brake release mechanism. The boat will lower on its fall wire or wires at a controlled rate of speed. If the commander suspects that the atmosphere surrounding the installation is threatened in any way, the air support system should be started by opening the appropriate valve. Once the boat is floating on the water, the commander or assigned crew member should operate the release gear to release the falls from the boat. Place the engine gear lever in forward or reverse with throttle up, taking the boat out of immediate danger. If a predetermined heading is not available, head on an angle 90 degrees away from the installation. Once clear of danger, head upwind at a course 30 degrees off the wind and waves for a distance of 1.5 miles. Upon reaching this site, the boat should heave to under power and wait for assistance. If the craft were to become disabled or lose power, a sea anchor could be streamed or assistance given before the craft drifted back into a danger area. Some exceptions to this procedure might include first assisting other lifeboats and life rafts who are unable to maneuver and drifting into danger, and recovering personnel in the water. If it seems that personnel in life rafts are having difficulty clearing the installation, it is possible to tow the life rafts away from danger in a procedure known as shepherding. Once a safe area has been reached, any injured should be given first aid, and communications established with rescue services, who will provide information on the best methods of rescue depending upon prevailing conditions. Once clear of the installation, the biggest danger to the capsule is the loss of watertight integrity. If doors are not kept closed and dogged, rough seas may permit water to enter the capsule, causing flooding, loss of stability, and capsize. The handling of the survival craft, once in open seas, requires expert seamanship by the lifeboat commander in order to reach a safe evacuation point. There are three basic conditions that the coxswain will have to contend with: running in a beam sea, running before the sea, and running into the sea. In a beam sea, the waves are acting directly on the boat's side, and in high seas could actually roll some boats over. If the course required for evacuation requires running in a beam sea, it might be best to change course slightly to take the seas off the bow or quarter in a zigzag-type course. Running before is the term used to describe the boat moving in the same direction as the wind and waves. The rudder and propeller can be lifted clear of the water as the stern is picked up by the approaching wave. By slowing down as the seas overtake the boat, it may prevent the stern from being caught and swung into a dangerous broadside position. Running before heavy breaking seas should be avoided if at all possible. In high seas, running into the sea will cause the boat and its passengers to take a severe pounding, as well as risking engine problems as the propeller is lifted in and out of the water. Again, by slowing down and taking seas at an angle of 30 degrees to 45 degrees off the bow, the boat will begin to roll and pitch instead of just pitch. If unable to make headway and there is a chance of capsize, the coxswain should try to put his lifeboat in as stable a position as possible by heaving to, heading into the wind and waves, and utilizing sufficient power to maintain that heading. In the event that the lifeboat were to lose power, it will almost immediately begin to put its largest face to the seas, turning broadside and running the risk of capsizing in heavy breaking seas. This is often called broaching. By deploying the sea anchor, it is possible to prevent the boat from broaching, keeping the bow heading into the wind and seas. It will stabilize the craft and reduce its drift rate from the main search area. A sea anchor, also called a drogue, is constructed in the shape of a pyramid or cone. At its mouth is a bridle, to which a painter is attached, and which takes the strain when the sea anchor is deployed. A line attached to the head of the sea anchor, called a trip line, is used as a recovery line. To deploy the sea anchor, attach the painter to the lifeboat's front hook, or the pad eye below the forward door, and walk around flange. On the windward side, lower the sea anchor into the water using the trip line, and continue to let it out until the line is streamed. The painter will eventually take up the strain, and the craft will come around into the seas. If the sea anchor is ever lost or damaged, a bucket, piece of canvas, or some other suitable material can be rigged as a substitute. If it becomes necessary to deploy a sea anchor, make rescue craft and other lifeboats in the vicinity aware of the situation so that they may render immediate assistance. If your lifeboat has been disabled, towing by another vessel may be possible under certain sea conditions. Rescue vessels attempting to tow a lifeboat should utilize extreme care, approach from downwind with a tow line readied at the stern, and toss the line to lifeboat personnel as the vessel slowly passes. On boats of this type of design, a tow line should be slipped over the bow hook and secured. With the rounded survival system's Whitaker lifeboats, the tow line is attached to the rope bridle on the fore end. Never attach the tow line to a lifeboat's lifting hook, as this could cause the capsule to be pulled over and capsize. The rescue vessel must keep moving forward at a rate not greater than 6 knots to prevent the tow line from ensnaring in the propeller. The tow line should be of sufficient length to prevent sudden surges. If the towing vessel is at the crest of a wave, the stricken lifeboat should be at the crest of a wave. Any course changes should be gradual, so as to prevent too great a strain being placed on the tow line. A zigzag course may prove more effective when it's desired to make headway into the weather as opposed to a head-on approach. Rescue and transfer from the lifeboat via helicopter, fast rescue boat, or standby rescue vessel will be attempted only if the weather conditions and seas permit. If any doubt exists, it is recommended that personnel remain in the relative safety of the lifeboat before putting lives at stake with a dangerous transfer. This decision should be made by the capsule commander only after a thorough assessment of the risks involved. Upon approaching and transferring to another vessel, the captain of the rescue vessel and the lifeboat commander must coordinate all efforts in order to minimize miscommunication and assure success. If mooring to a vessel, use only the available pad eyes located on the lifeboat's flange. Never moor the lifeboat with lines from any point above the walk-around area or flange. The hooks on top of the lifeboat are equipped with pad eyes, and when fully closed and locked, can be used to hoist the lifeboat to a rescue vessel through the use of a crane. Once it has been decided that a transfer is to be made, a lifeline will be attached. Passengers should remain strapped in their seats until it is their turn to leave the lifeboat or to assist in transferring any injured personnel, who should be moved first. When departing, leave in a controlled manner, keeping the weight evenly distributed. If a helicopter rescue is attempted, you should try to make radio contact with the aircraft. Head on a course, preferably to the right side of the helicopter, where the pilot and hoist personnel can best keep you in sight, which will minimize motion to the lifeboat. The pilot may ask you to change your course and speed, depending on sea and wind conditions. A basket will be lowered to the lifeboat, which the hoist operator will ground first to the water before bringing to the cabin entrance. A helicopter builds up a potentially dangerous static charge, which must be removed prior to contact with personnel. If the transfer is to take place at night, light up the capsule's doorway, being sure not to shine the light up at the helicopter. Move personnel with their life jackets on, one at a time, to the door area. Be sure that no one secures the hoist cable to the capsule while persons are being secured in the rescue basket or Stokes litter. Pay attention that the basket does not swing back into the boat as it rises. The position of lifeboat commander is a great responsibility. If it becomes necessary to launch a lifeboat during an emergency, the lives of those within will be riding on the ability of the commander to carry out his duties with speed and diligence. It is for this reason that the lifeboat commander should be well trained for his position, including knowledge of the boat's systems, skilled in handling the craft, and ability to plan for the worst, including weather, fire, injuries, and equipment failure. It is also important for all personnel working on ships and offshore installations to be trained in lifeboat operations by qualified instructors to ensure an orderly, panic-free abandonment and be able to fill in if the lifeboat commander is missing or injured. Frequent training and drills ensure that personnel can perform their duties quickly and effectively, and that the lifeboat and its support systems are functioning as designed. All survival craft should be partially lowered 10 to 15 feet and their engines started once each week, which can be done during regular abandoned ship or platform drills. Once every 3 months, all lifeboats equipped with a full crew should be launched, fully operated, and retrieved. This drill shall occur only during clear weather and sea conditions. The sprinkler system, the engine, the air system, the lifeboats and installations radio communication system, and the standby boat's level of preparedness must all be tested. Check that the installation's radio frequencies and the compass headings of the closest safe refuge are accurate and prominently posted in the survival craft. Hopefully, you will never have to utilize a lifeboat to escape from a marine emergency. But if a life or death situation arises, it will come swiftly with very little time to prepare. With proper training, you will be less likely to panic and more likely to react quickly and decisively. Your skills and positive mental state will enable you to more effectively work to save your own life as well as those around you.